The first step in understanding our emotions, even in finding healing in our inner life and emotional life, is this: we accept that our emotions are not bad things. Emotions aren't a flaw in the system, they aren't a weakness, they aren't a result of sin, they aren't a distraction. For followers of Jesus, this means accepting that emotions are part of our lives because that's what God intended. That's why it's vital to recognize that our emotions are a part of what it means to be created in God's image. In the last video, we talked briefly about how Scripture shows emotion in God's experience. But there's no clearer window into emotion in God's life than in the life of Jesus. Colossians 1:15 tells us that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. Jesus made a similar claim. John 14:9, he said, "Anyone who's seen me has seen the Father." So what we see in Jesus is an exact representation of what we can expect from God. Now, if you're ambivalent about the idea of God experiencing emotions, I can understand that, but there can be no question about this. Jesus wept at the grave of his friend Lazarus. Jesus experienced real grief at the death of a friend just like you and I would. Jesus celebrated when his disciples came back from a successful mission. He showed happiness and zeal and passion. Several times it seemed like Jesus showed frustration when his friends and disciples didn't understand him or didn't trust him. He became indignant when his disciples tried to keep little children away from him. Indignant. That's a polite kind of anger. And that's not the only time Jesus was angry. Jesus got angry, expressively angry, flipping the tables over angry with the priests and the merchants who were turning the temple into a mall and standing in the way of people coming to God. Jesus was moved by compassion for people in need, for the blind, for the lepers, for those who are wandering aimless in life. Jesus experienced the weight of loneliness and isolation in the garden and on the cross. Read the garden passage in Matthew 26. This is not some stoic Jesus pushing forward because it's the right thing to do. This passage is tense with emotional energy, loneliness, frustration, maybe even fear as he asks his Father if the cup can pass from him. Jesus felt all these internal movements, these gut-level responses. And Scripture says Jesus was the exact representation of God. This matters so much. It means your emotions aren't something to run from. It means they're not something to press down and avoid. Your emotions are an on-purpose part of the system, a gift given to you by God, meant to bring you wisdom. So when we don't pay attention to them or when we don't know how to listen to our emotions wisely, we lose out. We do damage to each other, we undermine our communities, and worst of all, we hamstring our spiritual growth. More on that in the next video. Learning how to listen to our emotions is why I wrote The Wisdom of Your Heart, discovering the God-given purpose and power of your emotions. It was something I desperately needed. If you think you might need it too, head over to www.thewisdomofyourheart.com.